tough. But after that, we started to see a lot of those. Don't do this again.
I'm sorry.
Don't do
Go
this
ahead.
again.
I'm sorry. Go
We've
ahead.
done this before.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They're very unserious together.
I'm sorry. I can't help it. Hi, Bae. I'm Coco Gauff, and I'm down in Australia with New Balance for the launch of my new kits. That was the first time I really met him up close. I seen him at my matches at US Open, and then when I saw him on the court today, I saw him when I was warming up. They panned the camera to him in the gym.
Coco Gauff stops match to save dying fan. The moment that broke the internet. Welcome back to the channel where we bring you the stories that don't just break the internet. They shatter it into a million pieces and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about sports, about fame, and about what it means to be truly human in a world obsessed with winning. If you clicked on this video thinking you were just going to get another tennis recap, another breakdown of serves and volleys, I need you to buckle up right now because what I'm about to tell you is so much bigger than that. This is the story that has the entire world talking. This is the moment that made hardened sports journalists weep into their laptops. This is the day Coco Gauff became more than just a tennis champion. She became a legend. It's Thursday, January 22nd, 2026, and the Australian Open is in full swing down in Melbourne. The temperature is pushing into the 90s, the sun is beating down like a hammer, and the world's best tennis players are battling it out for one of the sport's most prestigious titles. But in the middle of all that glory, all that competition, all those millions of dollars on the line, something happened that had absolutely nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with the kind of moment that reminds us why we're all here on this crazy planet together. I'm talking about Coco Gauff, the 21-year-old American superstar, and a young girl named Elijah whose story is about to absolutely destroy you in the best possible way. Now, before we dive into the tears, before we get to the moment that stopped 15,000 people dead in their tracks, we need to rewind the clock and understand who Elijah is and why this moment means so much more than any trophy ever could. Elijah is a teenager from Atlanta, Georgia. She grew up in a modest neighborhood where dreams are big but resources are small. Like millions of kids around the world, she fell in love with tennis. She had an old racket, probably bought secondhand from a garage sale, with grip tape that was coming loose and strings that had seen better days. She would spend hours after school on cracked public courts, hitting balls against a wall, imagining herself at Wimbledon, dreaming of walking onto Arthur Ashe Stadium with thousands of fans chanting her name. But here's where the story takes a turn that will break your heart. While Elijah's dreams were soaring, her body was failing her. She was born with a rare congenital heart condition, the kind of diagnosis that turns a childhood into a series of hospital visits, medication schedules, and worried conversations between parents and doctors in sterile hallways. As the years went by, as she got older and should have been getting stronger, her heart was getting weaker. The racket that once felt light in her hands started gathering dust in the corner of her room. The after-school practices stopped. The dreams didn't die, but they changed shape, becoming quieter, more desperate, more focused on just making it through another day. The doctors delivered the news that every family dreads. Elijah needed major surgery. We're not talking about a routine procedure here. We're talking about the kind of operation where they open you up, where the risks are listed on forms that take an hour to read, where the surgeons can't promise you'll wake up afterward. Imagine being a teenager and having to face that. Imagine your parents having to sign papers that might be saying goodbye to their child. The future that should have been filled with proms and graduations and first loves became a terrifying question mark. But in the darkest moments, when the pain was too much and the fear was overwhelming, Elijah had something that kept her going. She had Coco Gauff. Not the person, because she had never met her. She had the idea of Coco Gauff. She had the inspiration of watching a young black girl from Florida who faced down the pressure of the entire tennis world and refused to break. Every time Elijah had to take her medication, every time she had to go back to the hospital for another round of tests, every time the darkness crept in and whispered that maybe it would be easier to just give up, she would watch Coco play. She would watch this fierce, determined young woman fight through tough matches, come back from impossible deficits, and prove that heart, the metaphorical kind, could overcome just about anything. Elijah's family, working-class folks who knew what it meant to count every dollar, made a decision that would change everything. They decided that before the surgery, before Elijah had to face the biggest fight of her life, they would give her one gift. They would take her to see Coco Gauff play in person. This wasn't a casual decision. This wasn't just buying tickets to a local event. They scraped and saved for years. They gave up family vacations. Christmas presents became smaller. Dinners out turned into dinners at home. Every spare dollar, every bit of overtime pay, every sacrifice went into a single goal: getting Elijah to the Australian Open. They bought the cheapest tickets they could find because that's all they could afford. We're talking about nosebleed seats, the kind where you're so high up that you need binoculars to see the players properly, where the wind hits you first and the sound reaches you a second late. But Elijah didn't care. She was going to be in the same stadium as her hero. She was going to breathe the same air, feel the same energy, be part of the same moment. Her mother helped her make a sign. Nothing fancy, nothing professionally printed. Just cardboard and marker, the kind of homemade banner that usually gets lost in a sea of thousands. On it, in shaky handwriting that betrayed both her weakness and her determination, Elijah wrote, "Coco, you're my reason to fight." So there they were, on January 22nd, 2026, sitting in the upper deck of Court 3, has been on an absolute tear through this tournament. She came into the Australian Open with something to prove, with demons to exorcise, with a hunger that goes beyond just adding another trophy to the collection. She dismantled her first-round opponent, Kamila Rakimova, with a clinical 6-2, 6-3 performance that showed she meant business. Then in the second round against Olga Danilovic, the same player who had just knocked out Venus Williams, Coco was even more dominant. 6-2, 6-2, barely over an hour of court time. She was hitting winners from impossible angles, closing out tight games with ice in her veins, playing with a confidence and composure that made it look easy even though we all know it's anything but. The match was over, Coco had won, and this is normally where the script is written in stone. The player waves to the crowd, maybe throws a few balls into the stands, does the obligatory interview, and heads to the locker room to prepare for the next round. It's professional, it's expected, it's what happens at every single tennis match in the world. But Coco Gauff didn't follow the script. As she stood at the center of the court, soaking in the applause from 15,000 fans, something made her pause. She stopped midway. Her eyes, which should have been scanning the lower premium seats where the cameras and VIPs sit, traveled upward, way upward, past the corporate boxes, past the comfortable seats, all the way to the darkness of the upper deck where the cheap seats are, where most players never even look because why would they? And that's when she saw it. Among thousands of people, among hundreds of signs and banners and flags, Coco's eyes locked onto one tiny piece of cardboard trembling in the weak hands of a girl she had never met. The sign read, "Coco, you're my reason to fight." Now, you have to understand the odds of this moment. Professional athletes are trained to block out distractions. They're surrounded by security, by handlers, by the massive machinery of a Grand Slam tournament that keeps them separated from the crowd for safety and logistics. The chances of a player in the middle of the court seeing a specific sign in the nosebleed section are astronomical. But something happened. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was divine intervention, maybe it was just the universe aligning for one perfect second, but Coco saw that sign, and everything else fell away. By. She placed her hand over her heart. The crowd, which had been roaring with celebration just seconds before, started to quiet down, confused. Was she hurt? Was something wrong? The commentators were scrambling, trying to figure out what was happening. Then Coco did something that sent the tournament officials into an absolute panic. She didn't walk toward the tunnel. She didn't head to her chair. She left the court and started moving toward the stands. Security guards jumped into action, trying to figure out what was happening, talking urgently into their radios. But Coco wasn't stopping. She was on a mission. She reached the barrier that separates the court from the crowd, and she started climbing. Not metaphorically. She literally started climbing up toward the upper deck, navigating through aisles and stairs, ignoring the staff who were trying to guide her back, focused entirely on reaching that sign. The crowd realized what was happening, and the noise that erupted was unlike anything you'd hear at a normal sporting event. This wasn't applause for a great shot. This was the sound of 15,000 people collectively realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Meanwhile, up in the nosebleed seats, Elijah was crying. Not the gentle tears of happiness, but the kind of sobbing that comes from your soul, the kind that shakes your whole body. Her mother was holding her, both of them in complete disbelief because this doesn't happen. Celebrities don't leave the stage to meet fans in the cheap seats. Champions don't abandon their victory celebration to climb into the stands. But Coco Gauff wasn't thinking about any of that. She saw a girl who needed her, and nothing else mattered. When Coco finally reached the railing where Elijah was sitting, the security guards were frantic, trying to control the surge of fans who were now all trying to get close to the action. But Coco created a bubble of calm in the chaos. She reached over the metal barrier, and Elijah, this tiny girl whose body was betraying her but whose spirit was unbreakable, reached back. Their hands met, and time seemed to stop. Coco didn't deliver some rehearsed motivational speech. She didn't talk about her win or the tournament or any of the things she probably should have been focused on. She just looked at this girl, this stranger who somehow wasn't a stranger at all, and she spoke from the heart. "You're the fighter," Coco whispered, and the courtside microphones picked it up, broadcasting this intimate moment to millions of people watching around the world. "Not me. You." Then she did something that made everyone lose it completely. She took off the wristband she had been wearing during the match, the one soaked with sweat and effort and victory, and she placed it in Elijah's trembling hand. But she wasn't done. She unzipped her tennis bag, pulled out the racket she had just used to win the match, the actual piece of equipment that had just helped her secure her spot in the third round of a Grand Slam, and she passed it up to Elijah. "You keep fighting," Coco said, her voice steady and sure and filled with a conviction that cut through all the noise. "And I'll keep fighting for you." The stadium exploded. We're not talking about polite tennis applause here. This was a roar of pure, unfiltered human emotion. Grown men were wiping their eyes. The commentators were choking up on air, struggling to describe what they were seeing, because how do you put something like that into words? In that moment, Coco Gauff transcended sports. She became a symbol of what we can be when we remember that connection, real human connection, is worth more than any trophy or ranking or paycheck. Now, to fully appreciate why this moment hit so hard, you need to understand the pressure cooker that Coco has been living in. This is her 7th Australian Open, and Melbourne has not been kind to her. While she's won the French Open and the US Open, while she's collected Grand Slams and proven herself as one of the best players in the world, Australia has been her white whale. Remember 2024? She made it to the semifinals and ran straight into the buzzsaw, that is Aryna Sabalenka, the Belarusian powerhouse who has owned this tournament for the past few years. That loss haunted Coco. You could see it in her interviews afterward, hear it in the way she talked about Melbourne. This tournament represented unfinished business. So when she showed up in 2026, she showed up different. First of all, she's sporting these absolutely stunning orange braids that have been all over social media and have fans going crazy. But it's not just about the look. Coco has been working with a biomechanics specialist to fix the second serve that has been her Achilles heel for seasons. She's been training differently, thinking differently, approaching the mental game with a new level of maturity. And it's working. Through 2 rounds, she's been clinical. Against Rakimova, she weathered an early storm when the nerves were showing and those old demons were whispering. But she found her range and dominated. Against Danilovic, she was even better, playing with a controlled aggression that's terrifying to watch if you're her opponent. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is why we love Coco Gauff. While she's out here playing like a woman possessed, while she's chasing Grand Slam glory and dealing with the weight of expectations, do you know what she's been doing in her downtime? She's not locked in a hyperbaric chamber. She's not doing 6-hour meditation sessions. She is absolutely obsessed with a hockey romance show called Heated Rivalry. I'm not making this up. She has gone on record, on social media, inviting the actors Connor Story and Hudson Williams to come watch her matches. She's tweeting about enemies to lovers tropes while simultaneously destroying opponents on a tennis court. It's the most Gen Z thing imaginable, and we are here for it because it reminds us that underneath the superstar athlete, underneath the endorsement deals and the magazine covers, she's just a 21-year-old who loves good drama and isn't afraid to be herself. But speaking of drama, the real drama is what's coming next, because while Coco was having her moment with Elijah, the tournament bracket was churning out her next opponent, and this is where things get spicy. Waiting for her in the 3rd round is Hailey Baptiste, and this isn't just another match. This is the battle of the Americans. This is friend versus friend, and it's about to get intense. Hailey Baptiste is currently ranked number 70 in the world, which means she came into this tournament as a serious underdog. But she's been playing the tennis of her life. She took down Storm Hunter in straight sets. Then she went into a war with Taylor Townsend and emerged victorious after 3 grueling sets. She's battle-tested, she's confident, and most importantly, she has absolutely nothing to lose. When you're the underdog, when nobody expects you to win, that freedom can be dangerous. Baptiste has big ground strokes. She can hit through the court, and if Coco's serve starts wobbling the way it sometimes does, Hailey is exactly the kind of player who can make her pay. The bookmakers have Coco as a heavy favorite with odds sitting at minus 1,200, which basically means they think this should be a straightforward win for the higher-ranked player. But anyone who actually watches tennis, anyone who understands the mental warfare that happens when 2 Americans meet at a Grand Slam, knows that rankings mean nothing in these situations. Coco and Hailey know each other. They came up through the same USTA system. They've practiced together, probably hung out at the same player parties, definitely know each other's games inside and out. Playing a friend is always a mental minefield because you can't just flip a switch and forget all the personal connection. This showdown is scheduled for Friday, January 23rd in Melbourne, which translates to Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for everyone watching from the States. It's going to be played under the lights on Margaret Court Arena, which means the atmosphere is going to be electric. You're going to have American flags everywhere, split allegiances in the crowd, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Coco is fighting to keep her dream of a 3rd Grand Slam alive, fighting to prove that Melbourne can finally be hers. Baptiste is fighting for the biggest win of her career, for a chance to announce herself on the world stage in the most dramatic way possible. And looming over all of this, casting a massive shadow across the entire tournament, is Aryna Sabalenka. We have to talk about her because she's the elephant in the room, the final boss that everyone knows is coming. Sabalenka won the Australian Open in 2023 and 2024. She owns this court. She's playing with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you've conquered this stage before. She just demolished her second-round opponent 6-3, 6-1, barely breaking a sweat. She's on the other side of the draw, and if both she and Coco keep winning, they're on a collision course for the semifinals. That's the match the entire tennis world wants to see. The rematch. The redemption arc, Coco trying to avenge that 2024 loss that still stings. But none of that matters if Coco can't get past Baptiste first, and that's easier said than done. Which brings us back to why that moment with Elijah matters so much beyond just being a beautiful human story. That moment changed something in Coco. When she finally walked back down from the stands, when she picked up her bags and headed toward the locker room, she looked different. The weight seemed lighter on her shoulders. The pressure that has been building all tournament, all year really, seemed to have transformed into something else. She wasn't just playing for a ranking anymore. She wasn't playing to silence critics or to prove doubters wrong. She was playing for Elijah. She was playing for a girl in Atlanta who needed to see that fighting matters, that refusing to give up has meaning, that sometimes the battles we fight are bigger than ourselves. And here's the thing about athletes who find a purpose beyond themselves. They become dangerous. They play with a fearlessness that's hard to match because losing doesn't carry the same terror when you know you're fighting for something that matters more than your ego or your bank account. Coco has always been talented. She's always had the physical tools to compete with anyone in the world. But now she has something extra. She has Elijah's fight in her heart, and that might just be the difference maker. So what happens next? Can Coco ride this incredible wave of emotion all the way to the title? Can she take down her friend Hailey Baptiste under the Thursday night lights? The statistics say yes. Coco's serve has been clocking in at 118 miles per hour. Her forehand, which has historically been the weaker side of her game, has been rock solid through 2 rounds. Her movement, which has always been her superpower, looks as good as ever. She's been winning the important points, closing out tight games with the kind of mental toughness that separates champions from also-rans. But Hailey Baptiste didn't come to Melbourne to be a stepping stone. She sees an opportunity. She sees the massive expectations on Coco's shoulders. She knows that playing a friend can mess with your head, make you hesitate on shots you'd normally take. She's got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and that makes her the most dangerous kind of opponent. If Baptiste can keep the rallies long, if she can make Coco serve under pressure, If she can create doubt, she has a chance. It's not a big chance according to the odds makers, but it's real. You can watch all the drama unfold on ESPN and the ESPN app. The coverage starts at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday night. Do not miss this match. It's not just about tennis anymore. It's about narrative. It's about destiny. It's about whether Coco can channel everything she felt in that moment with Elijah into winning tennis. If she wins, she moves one step closer to finally conquering Melbourne, one step closer to that semi-final showdown with Sabalenka, one step closer to glory. If she loses, it will be heartbreaking on multiple levels because it's not just about her anymore. But win or lose, Coco has already won the Australian Open in the way that actually matters. She won the heart of a dying girl who needed a miracle, and she reminded all of us that sports at their best are about so much more than who ends up holding the trophy. This is exactly the kind of story we live for, the kind that reminds us why we're all here watching these athletes push themselves to the absolute limit. It's messy and beautiful and real and raw, and we're going to be tracking every single second of what happens next. We'll have the highlights from the Gauff versus Baptiste match, all the drama, the turning points, the post-match reactions, everything you need right here. But before we wrap this up, I want to hear from you because this story is bigger than just what happened in Melbourne. Do you think Coco's emotional moment with Elijah is going to fuel her to win the entire tournament, or is the emotional toll going to be too much to carry through 7 matches? Can Hailey Baptiste pull off the upset of the tournament and announce herself as a legitimate threat? And have you ever seen an athlete do something like this? Leave everything behind in the middle of their moment of glory to connect with a fan who needed them? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now because I read every single one and I want to know what you think. If this story touched your heart, if you're sitting there rooting for both Elijah and Coco, if you believe that sports can still be about more than money and fame, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this story to more people who need to see it. More people who need to be reminded that kindness and humanity still matter. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already because we're bringing you stories like this every single day, the stories that matter, the ones that make you feel something real. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our full breakdown of the Gauff versus Baptiste battle and everything else coming from the Australian Open. We're all on this journey together, all of us watching and hoping and believing that maybe, just maybe, the good guys can still win. Until next time, keep fighting your own fights just like Elijah. Keep believing in miracles just like Coco. And remember that sometimes the most important victories have nothing to do with the scoreboard. This has been your deep dive into the moment that stopped the Australian Open, and I'll see you in the next one.